and hopefully also stop the transcript. Just find that to be kind of annoying. So welcome everyone to our monthly roundtable for Citygate Network members that work with Gallagher for the endorsed insurance program. One of the key things we try to provide is risk education. For those of you that kind of have the bandwidth to consider alternatives to what you're already doing to manage the risk of running your ministry. So we're very excited to have Sarah Gibson, who is one of our expert risk consultants here to share some best practices and then really help facilitate a discussion. It would be, I think, so helpful for everyone to hear each ministry to say, this is where we're at with safety. This is about how many employees we have. This is what we do for training and accountability. Certainly in many industries like the construction industry and the trucking industry, having a safety committee is an absolute given, sometimes even required by your insurance carrier. There aren't any rescue mission insurance companies that presently require a safety council or safety committee, but certainly employee safety is a key part of retaining your employees. It's a key part of having a good mission culture. It's a key part of stewardship, keeping people safe. And so I don't think I've ever met a ministry that said, safety, we don't need to worry about that. But certainly I would say a safety committee is something that a lot of ministries don't always get around to. It's on a list of things that we would like to do, but we just haven't made it happen yet. And so if any of you are in that boat, that's a great place to start. Wanting to grow in this area is really the first step. And hopefully both Sarah's comments and comments from others can kind of provide encouragement to take wherever you are kind of to the next step of empowering your employees to helping run a mission that's safe for them to work at and is safe for the clients you serve. So Sarah, I'll sort of pass it along to you to kind of take us through our PowerPoint. And as always, I will interject with my color commentary.
Perfect. And for those who weren't on the call earlier when I mentioned it, after this presentation, we'll send a copy of the PowerPoint slide deck, but we'll also be sending a more detailed guide that kind of provides some more context and color on the best practice recommendations we'll talk about today, as well as some additional resources to help you guys implement or improve your safety committees if you do already have them in existence. So really quick, for those who don't know what a safety committee is or really what the purpose is, we did want to touch on that. So most organizations have safety policies and procedures, right? They may have, if there's an incident, for example, there's a policy and procedure to investigate it. You may have a report form that gets filled out. On the safety side specifically, you might have policies and procedures, for example, safe lifting practices, or de-escalation techniques, what to do if an employer volunteer is interacting with someone who's displaying aggressive behavior, that sort of thing. And while policies and procedures are great, as is training, sometimes when it comes to improving those or finding gaps where maybe additional training or additional procedures are needed, can be difficult to do at a bird's eye view, because a lot of times the people who come up with these policies and procedures, or you may get a template from myself or other resources that you have, they're coming from people who are looking at the risk either based on what you tell them or just common trends in religious and nonprofit organizations. So to really understand for your organization where all of your risks may be, where all of the situations that may need to be addressed to enhance safety for your employees, we really do need feedback from all levels of the organization, especially with ministries. I find a lot of times there's so much that you guys do. It may not just be having a place of worship where people come to congregate. It may also be that you have homeless shelters. You may be running food shelters for people. and other types of social services that really kind of broaden the potential exposures that you guys have. So being able to get feedback from the maintenance teams, from the staff on the ground, people in different departments, or what you're doing is a great way to sort of, like I mentioned, try and get into all the nooks and crannies of your organization's operations, get feedback from people who are actually being asked to carry out the policies and procedures. Sometimes I find that we don't often ask the people who we are actually doing the jobs what their feedback is. And since they're the ones who actually are the ones carrying it out every day, it's really good to get their feedback on what could improve this, how could we make this training program better, etc. So bringing together all of those employees as well as management together to be able to meet, to talk about these things is very, very beneficial for that reason. Like
Yeah,
James mentioned, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and I think it's not only that you do a lot of different programs, it's that a lot of times the way that you do those programs will pivot rather quickly. Like I'm sure almost all of you who do community feeding changed the way you did community feeding during COVID. And now perhaps you are thinking of changing it back, or you've pivoted a little bit. So, or it might, if you're a ministry that does cold weather sheltering at different locations or at your main location, again, that's a sort of a change in the regular day to day that you really want to get that on the ground feedback from. Um, but Sarah, like you said it once, and I'll sort of reiterate it because it's important. It can't just be senior management on the safety committee.
Mhm.
We absolutely have to have voices from the ground. What's sort of the right amount of management involvement to have? I mean,
So it is, of course, important to have management there because they're the ones who are likely going to have to, let's say the safety committee makes a recommendation to add a new type
mm,
of training. So just de-escalation training, for example, because that's something that a lot of organizations are starting to implement. Management's likely going to be the ones who have to be the ones to implement it and follow through on that action item. So
mhm,
if you have multiple departments or multiple areas that your ministry does, let's say social services, and then you have maybe an administration building, that type of thing. My recommendation is to do at least one staff member from that department and then one management level person from that department. And again, that way we can have a diverse group of voices that are participating. But for example, slip, trips, and falls is usually the number one source of liability claims. Usually the people that are going to be most heavily involved in implementing controls to reduce slip, trips, and falls is going to be maintenance staff. So you also have to think through, okay, what risks am I experiencing most often, and make sure that we have people on the ground level who would be the ones actually implementing the controls, because their feedback is going to be crucial. But again, that's not to say that management isn't, because they're the ones who have to implement it, but we do need that mix of voices. And then it is on the slide, but another thing to consider is whether or not you would want volunteers to participate in your safety committee. Some nonprofits do, some don't. It really depends on your organization and the level of involvement of the volunteers. I know some
mhm,
organizations have volunteers who come out weekly, sometimes daily. They're heavily
mhm,
involved. They may be a trusted voice that your organization, consults with. That may be someone who you do want to bring in. They don't have to be an employee to be on the safety committee, and they may have some valuable insight as well. But again, that's just going to kind of depend on your organization and the relationships with your volunteers. Um, and then just a couple other things for safety committees. So outside of getting voices together to be able to talk through ideas, come up with solutions, one thing that I find it really helps with is accountability with the safety programs. If you have a group of people meeting monthly or quarterly, and they are reviewing all of the completed incident reports, they're reviewing the training programs, they're periodically reviewing policies and procedures, you're far more likely to get buy-in from everyone to do their trainings, to fill out the report forms correctly, because they know that it's being reviewed. And also, again, by having people constantly doing that review and touching base on safety, it kind of does bring safety to the forefront of everyone's minds, and does set the tone that safety is an integral part of your organization, something that's taken very seriously. And that's probably the biggest effect I've seen safety committees have, is just getting buy-in from everyone into the safety culture. But then again, also making sure that that everyone's doing everything correctly, we're getting those reviews, and there's just this constant improvement process. Of course, we strive for perfection. We can never get there, but it at least has us always improving, rather than just using the same form we created 20 years ago. That type of thing. And then when it comes to how your insurance carrier views it, like James mentioned, there's no carriers that we know of right now are requiring nonprofits or religious organizations to have safety committees, but it is viewed very favorably among underwriters. If they see that you have a safety committee, if they maybe even see a sample of the meeting notes you have, or just maybe even a sample agenda of what you go over, in my experience, underwriters consider that to be best in class in terms of a safety committee. And I wish I could say, oh, you get this premium credit for it, which unfortunately we haven't been seeing the past few years in this hard market. But I do know that they view it favorably. They view the risk overall favorably, which hopefully helps you get those better coverages and pricing. James, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Going back just a little bit to who is on the safety committee, I would say for ministries who have more senior level clients who have been with you for a while, who are doing jobs that not in your mission, but in theory would be an employee's position. They're driving a vehicle. They're doing some kind of kitchen cleanup. They're doing some sort of light janitorial work around the mission, work therapy or chores. To the extent that you have clients doing those things, or participants in your life recovery program, it could also make sense to involve them in the safety committee as well. This is important because they could get hurt working in your thrift store or working in the kitchen as well. And we want to promote that safe work or work therapy environment for them as well. And in addition to that, it's for eventually when and if they transition to employment somewhere else, it's a good skill, maybe even a resume builder, to say, hey, I was on the safety committee at XYZ ministry while I was there. Because you can believe that every employer out there, they have insurance expenses that are very significant to them. They want to manage their safety as well.
Perfect. That's a great point. So that's, again, that we kind of touched on sort of what the purpose is, which really, just to sum that up, is to get a diverse group of members of your organization together, so that we can get, I would say, different perspectives on what safety controls should be added, what should be improved. Maybe we're doing things that we don't, maybe we're doing a training every year that's not really needed and doesn't apply. So we can just sort of get a more focused approach to safety, and again, help establish that safety culture and continuously striving for that improvement. Which brings us to the, where do we begin? How would we start to do this? I always recommend first thinking of a mission statement, or at least a scope or framework of what you'd like your safety committee to do. Every organization is going to be a little bit different. Some may already have great safety programs, very few losses. So really the purpose is going to be just to enhance and improve upon what's already being done. Other organizations may be experiencing a lot of losses. So you may actually have goals to reduce the number of claims or the number of injuries your employees are sustaining, or maybe third parties such as your clients. Your goals may be a little bit more specific. In the resources we're going to send out afterwards, I am going to send out a sample scope of what a safety committee would do, what the members would be asked to do as a part of it. Again, that's just a template. You don't have to use that, but if you are thinking, okay, well, I just don't know where to start, I'd like to see what other people are doing so I can I can understand what maybe my committee scope should be. That would be a great place for you to start. And you guys can feel free to use it as is, or you can, change words, take what you like out of it. It's completely for you guys to take and use. But you won't have to recreate the wheel is all I'm saying. So we will get you that sample mission statement, and then in the guidelines that we'll send out as well, there's also some more information about what other organizations have done. But that's a good place to start, because when we invite people to the safety committee, they may be asking, well, how often am I going to have to participate? How long are these meetings going to be? What's really our end goal? So having all of that information up front before we invite people to it, I find is helpful. And that way also you guys have to, don't have to answer as many questions as you would have otherwise. And then we did touch on different types of people that'd be good to have on the committee, but a couple important things to consider is, of course, we want people on the committee who want to participate. The whole purpose of this committee is to get people's feedback. So if someone doesn't want to be there and they're not going to be giving us their perspective, they're probably not going to be a great person for the committee. We don't want this to be a punishment for anyone. Again, we want it to be people who want to help the organization get better. And again, the only way this is going to be effective is really if everyone on the committee participates. So that's one thing to consider. And then, as we mentioned, we also want to make sure that we have a well-represented team. So we don't want it to be all management. We don't want it to be all staff level or all volunteers, nor do we want it all from one department. Even if you have a safety department with a couple people, we wouldn't want the whole committee made up of that group, because again, what we want to have people that are doing all of the jobs that we're implementing these policies and procedures for, to get their feedback. And then, of course, we also need to define the roles and responsibilities for the people who are going to participate. We do recommend electing at least one chairperson, or having two chairpersons, having them be co-chairs of the committee, just because we do need someone who's going to be in charge of setting the dates and times of the meetings, that's going to be choosing the topics. And sometimes when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it can be difficult just to get the basic agenda laid out. So if we have one or two people that are defined as that chairperson, it's good, because then we can at least have someone in charge of getting these meetings on calendar, leading them, again, selecting the topics, and guiding everyone through those meetings. Another important position that I would recommend adding to your safety committee is just as a secretary, someone to take notes. A lot of times in the safety committee meetings, good information comes out of it. For example, maybe you're reviewing an incident report. I'll use a slip and fall as an example again, just because it's the most common claim we see. But let's say we looked at a slip and fall incident report. We found that no caution sign was posted, that, there was a 15-minute gap between when the spill was discovered and when it was mopped up. The committee may say, okay, we need to order more caution signs. We don't have enough. That site didn't have a mop, for example. They had to borrow one from someone else just to get it clean. You may find issues going through those incident reports. You may also find the root cause of what caused that spill. Maybe there was a leak, for example, or maybe there was a spill because a bucket of liquids was being stored somewhere it shouldn't have been. So now, we're going to be training staff not to keep that there. But all that good stuff isn't going to go anywhere. There'll just be ideas floating around if we don't put pen to paper, write them down, make sure that it gets communicated to management, and then be able to get some of those corrective actions be put in place. So also having a secretary who's going to be able to write down notes from the meeting, as well as any actionable items if any decisions are made. So that way, again, we have pen to paper, and it's that, in my experience, is just more helpful and more effective in getting the follow through than just having the ideas floating around. And then, of course, we also want to make sure you create your schedule. So there's really two main buckets safety committee meeting frequencies fall in, and it's usually either monthly or quarterly. And how often these meetings take place will depend, one, on the availability of everyone that's a part of the safety committee, but also, like I mentioned before, where's your organization at with losses? If you're having losses every single month, incidents every month, you may want to meet monthly because your organization's in a state where safety needs to be on the forefront every single month. But if you're not having a lot of losses or incidents, and really this committee is just to review a couple of reports you had every quarter, or review policies and procedures, training schedules, that type of thing, I think quarterly would probably be more appropriate for those types of organizations. But you can create. There's no rule on how often you have to meet. You may even just do it by, twice a year or annually, depending on capacity. But again, I would say the most common is quarterly. And then if your organization is having a lot of claims, monthly may be a more appropriate schedule. So, okay. So I didn't see any questions come in. So I'm going to transition to, what should these meetings cover? And I know we've talked about some of this, but just to go through it all, I do recommend that the incident reports completed between the last meeting and the current meeting, all of those incident reports be reviewed. Because again, like I mentioned, we may find what caused the loss to occur and be able to think of solutions to prevent it from happening again. Or we may find in reviewing those reports, maybe it wasn't filled out correctly. For an example, maybe someone wrote down an opinion as a fact, or they took someone's witness statement, and instead of saying Jane Doe alleged this happened or told me this happened, they wrote down that witness's statement as if it was a fact. So there may be problems with the reporting itself that you can catch, and that way we know, okay, maybe we need to get a training on calendar now in the next couple months to educate everyone on best practices for incident reporting. You may also find that the response itself just wasn't adequate. Maybe they said something to the claimant they shouldn't have, like maybe promising to pay for medical bills, for example, or maybe, like I said, they didn't post that caution sign when there was a spill. So I think there's a lot of value in having people review incident reports so that we can, again, try and prevent repeat incidents from occurring, but also potentially find some trainings that maybe we need to do and overall improve the process. Another type of report that's good to review that I recommend doing are inspection reports. So if your facility is already doing hazard identification inspections, so for example, at least, once a week, if not at least once a month, you're going around, you're looking for, loose shingles on the roof, or, signs of water leaks for property damage. On the liability side, maybe you're looking for, loose fixtures on the wall, like lights that could fall and hurt someone, or slip, trip, and fall hazards on the ground. Having the committee review those reports as well, the documentation that you're keeping, I think is helpful. One, for accountability, make sure that people are actually doing these inspections and documenting them. And then two, same with the incident reports. There may have been issues found in those inspection reports that maybe haven't been corrected yet, or maybe the correction that was done wasn't the best way to go about it. And having that committee discuss what happened, what they think would be the best way to prevent this again, I think helps improve the controls that we implement moving forward. Again, because now you're having, instead of just one person trying to fix a problem, you have a group of people working together to find the best solution, maybe even multiple solutions. In case one doesn't work, we can go to a plan B. So that's why I think reviewing those inspection reports are helpful as well. And again, it doesn't need to be granular if we're checking every single item, but just making sure that they're being completed. And then if there are issues noted, reviewing those as a group, I think is helpful. If your organization is not doing hazard identification inspections, it is something that both myself and insurance carriers recommend doing, because we can't prevent losses or put in controls to fix hazards if we don't first identify them. We have to find these issues in order to fix them, because if we don't find them, of course, we won't do anything about it. And that's where maybe a property damage or liability or workers' comp claim comes into play. So that's why hazard identification is so important. And perhaps if you're not doing it already, that's something that could be a goal for your safety committee, is to implement that. We have sample checklists that we can give to you guys as a starting point. Your committee can go through and fine tune that for your organization. And then they could be the ones to educate people on the importance of that and help get these inspections being done. And then again, of course, reviewing them during the meetings. It would be a great way to help get a hazard identification program started. Other things that would be good to be discussed, of course, if employees or volunteers or clients raise safety or health concerns or issues, maybe they raise a security issue, for example, anything that gets brought up like that to management or reported in any way to anyone, that would be a great place for that issue to be discussed is with the safety committee. Again, just to be able to roundtable the issue, get a diverse set of opinions on what could be done to fix it, how it could actually be implemented. I think that would be a great place for it, because a lot of times we get these complaints and we're not sure what to do with them or how to handle them. And a safety committee could be a great venue for that. Other things that are good, like I mentioned before, so I'll just quickly touch on them again. When we're talking about either creating a new policy and procedure, or we're talking about, maybe reviewing a safety plan or reviewing a policy and procedure, the safety committee is a great group of people for that. You could even break up a plan review. If you, let's say you haven't, touched a safety plan in 10 years and it needs to be updated, having the committee, maybe each member taking a section, discussing it as a group, what they would change and why, if they found anything missing. This way it doesn't all fall onto one person to get it done. Again, you can have that whole group participate, give each other feedback, and then be able to help improve, or like I mentioned before, if they find anything's missing, you get new plans put in. And then finally, for your risk management or safety trainings, having the safety committee go through, look at the trainings, how often they're being done, I find is helpful, especially at the staff level, because they'll know what's too many trainings, training overload essentially, where information's just going to get lost, or they'll know we don't really need to be trained on this topic, but there's this other area of risk that we've never had a training on that we desperately need. Getting their feedback on that, I find, for the clients that have done safety committees, that's been extremely helpful for them, improving their training programs. And then one other thing I wanted to touch on, is just record keeping. So as I mentioned before, I find this is most effective if we can just put pen to paper, get all the ideas written out, make sure actionable items are followed through on. So finding that secretary who's going to do all of that would be extremely helpful. On the slide here, this is something that we are going to send out to all of you guys. It's just a sample safety committee meeting minutes where you essentially just do a roll call of who attended. You have the agenda written out. And then write down notes for each thing. And again, if there is an action item that needs to be done by the next meeting or a certain date, have that in bold highlighted, and then make sure that the chairpersons for the committee are following up with management to make sure that it gets through. But I have been asked questions before of, well, is it good to write all of this stuff down? Is it better not to have documentation? I'm not saying that you have to write a full transcript of the meeting. I don't think that would be helpful either. But again, if you do have an action item, whether it's for myself or it's for an organization, I find that if you write it down, it's just much more likely to get done in the follow through. So at least getting that high level overview of what's being recommended by the committee, the leadership's response, and then again, what any due dates or any actionable items we need to take, getting all that written down is extremely helpful. Okay. And with that, James, I don't know if you have anything to add before we turn to the roundtable discussion.
Sarah, I think you did a great job giving an overview. And I'm really excited to hear from everyone. I am going to just look at the attendee list, and I'm going to look at that list. It seems to be in alphabetical order by first name. So Ashley, you get to be first. Hooray, hooray. And just tell us, what mission you're from, maybe roughly how many employees you have, just to give folks a sense of the scope of what you're doing. And maybe tell us if you have a safety committee, what it looks like. And just brief comments, I think, would be great. So Ashley first, then Brayton, and then Buddy. And you're welcome to come on camera if you want, or you can just do audio only.
I'll put the camera on. Let me just
all right.
Move things around here. Am I there? There I am.
Yeah.
Did someone just join?
Yeah, I'll worry about that.
Oh, okay.
Tell us about you and Open Door.
So I'm the vice president of HR for Open Door Mission in Rochester, New York. We have about 70 employees currently. We are getting ready for some more employee growth over the next year or so. We don't have a formal safety committee. We sort of informally, through management, as things pop up, it becomes part of our management discussion, but it is something that we have talked about for a while. Just hasn't had any feet and launched off the ground as of yet.
Awesome.
But I think
Thank
a
you,
lot of the things that you guys talk about are things that we've done, just not things that are taking place through like a formal committee.
Awesome. Great.
Well,
Thanks for
done is
sharing.
better than perfect, I always say.
Yeah.
So as long as again, reviewing these things, because it's that's really where we're going to find room for improvement. We can collect all of this information, but if we don't do anything with it, that's where we can get stuck.
Yeah, we do incident reports. We do follow up on incident reports and have recommended corrections. We have, through your guys's guidance, we have implemented some training for risk reduction, such as driver safety, Red Cross training, ad hoc, depending on what's needed for our agency. So we try to be at least proactive in that part and looking at what our risks are and how we can reduce those.
Perfect.
Great. Awesome. Great. I'm sure as we discuss more, we'll hear more from you, but let's hear from Brayton, one of our missions out in Montana.
Yeah, Braden Erickson, Butte Rescue Mission in Butte, Montana. So we don't have a formal safety committee with assigned members, but we do set aside on our bi-weekly staff meetings. Sorry, we have roughly 16 staff members.
Here, Brayton, I don't know if you're using a phone and your computer, but you're sounding kind of far away a little bit.
On every staff meeting to discuss safety, and then there's issues that are brought to the
Yeah, I
table,
can't hear him.
All right, let me see if I can mute him on one.
Senior staff to review
You can't even hear them say anything.
procedures, and then ensure that we are addressing those concerns. So basically, every staff member is part of the.
Oh, hey, Brayton, can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me.
Semi-annual basis. So that's what we've done, but I really like the idea of actually forming a committee that keeps minutes. So that's what we've done.
All right. So I'm sorry. I think we couldn't really hear Brayton too well there. I don't know exactly. So, we're in a large room or something, but that's, yeah. Brayton, if you want to give us just a high level, for some reason when your mic's not working well, if you just want to tell us kind of a high level on the chat, if you do a safety committee, and if so, what it's like, and maybe how many employees at Butte, that'd be great.
Can you hear me now?
That's a bit better, yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had a technical difficulty. So we have about 16 staff members, and we don't have a safety committee, but we do set aside in our biweekly staff meetings, every one of them, to discuss our safety concerns over the whole organization, and then we address those as senior staff if there is anything that is brought to the table when it comes to safety, and making sure that we're addressing those in our policies or procedures so that we're changing. So if anybody has a safety concern amongst staff, it's being addressed.
Oh gosh, the tokens are.
Okay, great. All right, that's awesome, Brayton. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
I'll move the proverbial countdown to Buddy Morrow from CETA Mission in Melbourne, Florida. Buddy, I know, has a safety counselor committee of sorts.
Yes, sir, we do. And, you helped us get that started back last year. We have one of our board members, our executive director. We have a outside person who's actually a deputy sheriff. And then we use the rest are our staff members. Our maintenance director is on there. Our gentleman that's over our trucks is on there. We have a driver on there, and then we have our director of operations on there. And we've done a lot of the stuff that Gallagher produces for us, and requiring our people to do the classes and the videos that they provide. And then we've graduated where we only have a quarterly meeting. Matter of fact, they met just, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was unable to be in that meeting there, but we try to stay on top of things. And every time we're on one of these conferences, we find out something we're not doing, or we're not doing it probably the way it's best to be done. So we learn from all of these discussions, and thank you for putting them on for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you for following through. And I'll tell you, for those of you that don't know, auto insurance is just a very significant expense in Florida. And Buddy and his team, they have some full-time drivers. They've done a great job managing that risk. Because if you ever drive in Florida, every other billboard is an attorney who says, "How are you hurt in a car accident? Help us. We'll get you all the millions you deserve." And it's a tough place to do ministry for that reason. But yeah, Buddy and his team, they really have do a great job with screening and training and monitoring their drivers.
I was just in South Florida this past weekend, so I'm familiar with those billboards and with the drivers.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. The two largest injury law firms in America are in the state of Florida. Of course, I think everybody's heard of Morgan & Morgan, but Dan Newland's another one. And you cannot watch TV around here to where you don't see at least 3 different attorney ads during even primetime shows. So it's and I didn't say I'm with CETA, Crisis Answer Rescue Mission, and we've been around for almost 55 years now. We take care of 54 men. We'll be opening up our women's shelter, which I need to talk to you about, Jim. We looks like we're about maybe 4 weeks out, and we'll be opening our women and children's shelter up here in a few weeks. And we have right now at this time we have 24 employees.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Buddy. And that's so exciting that Helen's Home is coming online. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah. Next, we go to Dan Servey, who I think is from a city mission in Findlay, Ohio. So I want to is Southwest Ohio. So Dan, the floor is yours. Tell us about what you guys are doing. We have a chat from Dan. Doesn't have a mic, so everyone can hopefully see in the chat what they are doing. They have weekly meetings with their staff where safety concerns and improvement are discussed. Okay, great, great, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Next, Jessica. Hi, Jessica. I'm embarrassed to say I forget which ministry you're from, but tell us.
Sorry for the delay. From Gospel Rescue Mission in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, yes, that's right. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so tell us, do you guys have a safety committee?
Not necessarily. We pretty much leave that up to our maintenance team and do, of course, evaluations regularly, but I wouldn't say it's an official set in stone, these certain people on an actual safety committee.
Okay. And about how many employees do we have at the Tucson mission?
84.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. I see Robert Williams also from the team at the Open Door Rochester. Robert, was there anything you wanted to add to?
No, I'm really glad to be on the call though. Ashley, I work with Ashley and I'm the Vice President of Operations. So she basically laid out pretty much where we are. It's always been a desire to have a safety committee. We've done some things here and there. Our director of facilities is OSHA certified, so we've gotten that down. We certainly implement right now routine fire drills, or have begun to do that. But just more of a comprehensive plan is really what we're looking for to get into in the committee, and who would serve, who's best to serve. So Ashley pretty wrapped it up pretty much. So again, glad to be here.
Fantastic. Robin, can you tell us a little bit about what a safety committee looks like at your ministry?
It looks like it's non-existing.
Well, you're here though, so that's a start.
Yes. We want to change that, and we have approximately 78 employees. I haven't been in the director of operations position, not quite a year yet. I was stewarding over at our women's and children's facility. And of course, the women have it all down like we had dialed in. So now, like moving into the entire organization, and we have a lot of informal good things going on, but just tracking down any kind of written policies has been a project in itself. We want to change that. We want to change that. I had a question because I don't want to take all the time, but I'm hearing that this safety and these kind of this safety committee and those things along those lines seem to be driven from the human resources department. Is that always the case? Is that the department that I should be working with to kind of oversee this, or do you think it should just stay under the operations director? That's where I'm a little confused on, because I don't. If I knew that.
That's a good question. I'll tell you what I think, and Sarah will tell you what she thinks. I would say 78 employees. I think it kind of is up to you. I don't know that there's a right way to do it. It certainly could be a part of HR if HR has that capacity, but it could also go up under operations.
Okay.
Yeah. And I agree.
So,
it does depend on the organization, because I've worked with some organizations where the director of finance does all the risk management and insurance matters. Others have it in operations. A lot, though, their HR departments are the ones who set training calendars and would be a good pivot point to pull in people from different departments. So again, it kind of just depends on your organization. But as in terms of setting it up, especially with the size of your organization, I would at least recommend working with HR, even if you don't, give it to them to set up. Just because of the size and the fact that they're likely going to be involved with implementing action items that come out of it.
Thank you. So that's where we're at. We're on our way. I'm working with my beloved Sarah on risk management. So I'm excited.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Robin, tell us, which ministry are you from?
Redwood Gospel Mission in California.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we have 5. So we have thrift stores and various facilities, and so there's a lot of different types of requirements for safety and management, and we have vehicles, and because what's going on in the warehouse is probably one of the areas that has more risk, because of forklifts and just the volume and production and things going on there. But so we have a lot of areas. Right now, I just want to kind of start with the incident report. We've had one that's been there since I've been here in 2014. It doesn't seem to accommodate all of the incidents, and not enough space. If you guys have a template for one of those, do you, everybody in this group, do you use the same incident report, or do you have multiple ones? Because, like, for example, on the workplace violence prevention and the laws and all, they are saying that we need a separate one. So if anybody has any input on that, thank you.
And for those on the call who don't know, California, and they're the first state to do it, but they're now requiring all employers implement a workplace violence prevention program. That it also includes not just a written policy, but a training component, a workplace assessment, as well as very specific incident reporting requirements. So that's what Robin was referring to. Other states may adopt similar rules in the future. Usually California and New York lead the way, so that might be an emerging risk to put on the to-do list for a future date. And then to answer your question, Robin, for what I've seen other clients do, so workplace injury, so workers' comp, that should always be its own form. Some states have really specific employer reporting requirements. Most insurance carriers, if you're not in a state-run program, have specific forms they want you to use. So I always recommend using either the state's form or the insurance carrier's form for workplace injuries. And then as far as property damage and bodily injuries, those can be on the same incident report form. We have a template that is kind of designed to capture information for those. Another type of incident that would need its own incident report is auto accidents, just because there's unique information we need to gather for those. And then I also recommend at the top of that report form sort of having a list of what to do if you get into an accident, safety tips, things like that. So I would say workplace injuries, auto accidents should have their own. Property and liability can be combined. And then if you do have any unique risks like California's workplace violence prevention, those ones are only separate, I think, because of the strict code requirements you have to collect very specific information that wouldn't apply to other incidents.
Okay, so several.
Unfortunately, yes. I wish there was a one size fits all. But that would probably be a 5-6 page incident report form.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think the good news is templates exist.
Yes.
Not something you need to create from scratch. It's just a question of sort of modifying, organizing, and saving it in a central place so that everyone kind of has access to it who needs it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So, and then the last person we haven't heard of is Thomas, who I think is from the mission in Turlock, but I could be wrong about that. Turlock, California. And then the last thing will be just if anyone has questions they'd like to ask of any of the ministries. I know I'm interested in hearing from Buddy at CETA, how they like having outside members of the community and a board member on their council or committee. So, but Thomas, to you.
Hey guys. Yes, I'm from the Turlock Gospel Mission here in California. We recently formed a safety committee, I want to say last month. And right now the committee consists of just a few employees. We have about a dozen or so employees total at our mission. And right now it's me as one of the directors, one of the leading chefs in our kitchen who helps oversee our culinary training program. We have a program intern who kind of helps to oversee other programmers and their safety. And then another staff member who's on the insurance to drive vehicles. So that's kind of the group we have right now. Currently, we are, for now, meeting just once a month, seeing how that looks. And then going from there, seeing if, the months leading forward, we need to meet on a more frequent basis. And we actually are having our first meeting later this week. And kind of the things I had to talk about were, just basically going over incident reports. I've seen an issue where I don't want to say a lot of our staff, but some of our staff is not really utilizing the incident reports the way they're supposed to, or outright forgetting to do them. And so I want to make sure that our safety committee's trained on them, knows where they are, can direct others to know where they are and to do them when necessary. I'm interested in learning about that violence prevention, because that's definitely something that we need to get better at and be prepared for. But yeah, like I said, this is our first go at it, so we're trying things out, seeing how it goes. But this is a very informative meeting. It's giving me more things to do when we get together to talk about safety and everything like that. So yeah, that's what I got.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask of the group or things they're looking for input on? I know something Thomas kind of tacitly says is, how do you help people fill out an incident report when they need to fill one out?
thanks for your patience and thanks for jumping or going without me. I think one of the important things of filling out and encouraging people to fill out an incident report, first find out what the hurdle is. Sometimes it's not a part of the process and not a part of the thought process. Sometimes there's a fear that I'll fill it out wrong, or there'll be some kind of punitive response, or culturally it's like it would feel like tattling on somebody. If it depends on the hurdle as to what you do to respond, right? I often find people are just hesitant to fill it out, not sure whether it's the right thing to do. And I think the right culture is to say, we want all potential incidents, and this is the no judgment zone. We're not going to hold it against you if you write up the report and you write it up wrong. We're not going to hold it against you if you write up the report and it puts somebody in a bad light. It really is trying to move forward. So that's, yeah. And Thomas, if you and Sarah have not connected, I can easily send you guys an introduction, since I've got your email as well. Send an introduction to make sure you guys get connected on that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Oh, we got a comment from Dan. Let's see if I can get it. Is looking to set up a de-escalation training and not sure where to start in the search for a trainer. Should he start with a local PD? I think there's a couple options here. Sarah, I'm going to jump in and then let you go as well. Kurt Flosky out of Bend, Oregon, has been training missions nationwide for over 25 years. De-escalation is a part of that training process. And he's currently running Shepherd's House Ministries there in Bend, Oregon. There's plenty of other options as well. So, and I'd be happy to make that introduction. I can get some information out.
As far as the police departments go, it just depends on their bandwidth and the capacity that they have. I've had some local police departments come out to the sites. They'll do security assessments. They'll do de-escalation training for everyone. It's a great resource. They usually don't charge anything, so it's also for free, which is always good. So I think it's a good place to start. It doesn't hurt to ask. All they can say is no. But same thing with, if you're going to do fire drills, reaching out to the fire department. I always recommend starting with those potentially free resources first. We at Gallagher have sampled de-escalation policies and procedures and guidelines. Unfortunately, we don't have a training yet in our library, but I'll double check with Great American to see if they have one. Otherwise, a trainer like John mentioned, or Crisis Prevention Institute and PROACT are two very popular ones. The main difference between them is that Crisis Prevention Institute's in person. PROACT is an online training, so it also depends on sort of how you want to facilitate the training as well. But again, I think it would be a good idea to at least start with the police department to see if that's something that they can provide.
Also, well, we're doing our first trainings. We had our first one yesterday and the last two today. And he's been a friend of ours and a volunteer at the mission for many years. He's a retired fire chief, paramedic, is an instructor at the local junior college. So you may want to check with your local college to see if they have any instructors that, just have it on their heart to volunteer. I don't know about the material of PROACT and the other training that you suggested, Sarah, but I did look into those and they were cost prohibitive for us.
They're very expensive.
Yes,
That's
very.
true. And sometimes for some larger ministries, it does make sense to have that investment, so that you have a trained trainer on staff. But yeah, that's oftentimes it's tens of thousands of dollars. So the route that you're going, I would say is a great route to explore for most ministries, is find find someone who has that kind of first responder background.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of ministries that do de-escalation training, they're doing some online and some in person together. The idea is you're kind of layering it a little bit.
Great idea though to check with local universities or junior colleges or things like that, because you're right, there might be people they have on staff that could do that. So that's checking with local resources is great as well.
All right, we are winding down our hour, and I appreciate all of your time and attention and commitment. Anything else anyone is wanting to ask before we wrap it up? Feel free to jump in.
As always, it's great to see names of people that I love. So good to see y'all. Hope you have a great weekend. If I don't talk to you before then.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
And Sarah, thank you so much for helping facilitate this and for your great input. And yeah, we feel free to reach out to John or Sarah or I with any kind of follow-up questions. We want to continue to support your ministry in any way we can. So take care. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.